Hey, welcome to the Closing Time Podcast. My name is David Mansour, and I'm a mortgage loan officer here in Peachtree City, Georgia. And the goal of my podcast is simply to give you some insight and maybe look behind the curtains in the lives of some of the people that you do business with and see who they are outside of their careers. I hope you enjoy. So I was thinking about the rockets, the spaceship that just went to the moon, and how they get close and then something just takes over. The moon's gravity just draws them in. At a certain point, you're not forcing it anymore. You're just being pulled. Today, I want to talk about how my life, I guess, has changed over the last 12 months. So on tomorrow morning, today is Easter. Happy Easter. Resurrection Sunday. Tomorrow morning, my son and I are joining our Southside group to go to Guatemala on another mission trip. And so since it's been 1 year since we went, me and Max went again last spring break, I thought I would just kind of reflect on what has changed in my life. And the purpose for me kind of putting this out there is to expose my imperfections, my immaturity, ignorance, all of those things, just hoping that maybe somebody else has the same hesitations or was afraid to take the same steps, whatever that might look like. You know, to many of you, you're probably much stronger in your faith, and this might be nonsense. You might think it's ridiculous, and that's okay. But if one person identifies with the questions I have and maybe the hesitations that I have, then, hopefully it helps them in their walk. So I've done another podcast about my journey, but it feels like it is a journey. One thing that I always hesitated about was I always felt like it was like flipping a switch, is that I had to wait until I was ready to flip the switch. When I was going to be a Christian, I had to set aside everything, and it was just black or white. And obviously that's the goal. But there's no reason to not take a step in that direction because you're not ready. Or not necessarily not ready, but just maybe you don't have the answers yet. Maybe breaking that habit of dropping an F-bomb is still pretty strong. Whatever that looks like for you, that is my point, is that I felt like until I was willing to give up all of these things that, I guess, when I look at some versions of Christianity, especially in the past, when I had seen some versions of Christianity, there was no attraction towards it to me, because I kind of saw how some of these people acted 6 days of the week. And so therefore I don't really believe what they said on the seventh, and trying to hold my judgment and reservations even towards some of those people now, because a lot of people are on different journeys. It's not my job to judge other people, and I ask that you not judge me where I am on things that I might be hypocritical about, because I'm trying. And I know there's some stuff about, as you get closer to God, sin becomes more evident to you. And just some of the things, I think somebody said, your desires to do some of the things that you want to do or really enjoy doing, partying and cussing and this or that, your desire to do that will get less and less as you get closer to God. So you don't have to just cut it off. It's not just end it. You're going to no longer want to do those things. That's the point. I think I rambled there for a little bit. So, the first mission trips, I did El Salvador with a bunch of guys, and that was November. It was over Thanksgiving in 2004? And that was just incredible. Hard work. Didn't really know any of the gentlemen I went with, and came back with several just best friends out of it. It was just incredible. The biggest thing I got there was the worship music was just incredible. It was playing like in the restaurants and in the place where we stayed, and some of the young people that were really cool guys, like really just smart and intelligent and just like hip or cool. I don't know what the word is. They were just, they just knew all the words. It was a vibe. It was just awesome. So that really turned me on to the Christian music. I just started listening. I was just like, man, these guys are real. They're normal. Like, these are people I would hang out with. And so I guess that was my first kind of glimpse. And okay, it isn't all stuffy. It's not, it's not all ties and acting all proper all the time. It's people that I had great conversations with, played games with, and just had a great, great time. And then I went with Max after that. That was spring breaks. That was, 5 months later. And that one was a year ago. So it's really a little bit over a year that we're talking about here. But there was just a draw, and I can't really explain it. Nothing happened. I wasn't down on my luck. There wasn't a tragedy. It wasn't something bad. It was just something was pulling me in. Something was a curiosity, just, maybe it was not being satisfied with the world, maybe it's satisfied with the way I influence the world. Sometimes I get frustrated because of my own hypocrisy, because I do get mad at people when they don't care as much as I do about things that I care about. But then, other things I have zero empathy for, and which are important to other people. So that's the hypocrisy I'm talking about. So there was just this draw and this curiosity, and I was just like, God, is it real? And then I'm like, I really want to believe, but I like you might have. I just had so many questions. Like, the Old Testament doesn't sound. We got lambs and blood over in Noah's Ark and parting Red Seas and Adam and Eve. It sounds crazy. It really does. And here's one thing that's changed is I never have read the Bible. I've never read it before. I knew some verses, the stuff they say in church, the stuff you memorize in Sunday school, but I never really read it. And so I started this journey for research, really. Just, I'm like, hey, I need to give this a chance. I need to learn about it. I need to examine it. I need to, somebody said, hey, have you ever read the Bible? And I'm like, yeah, maybe no. So I started there, and that's helping a lot. It's tying things together and it makes a lot more sense when I put the whole picture together instead of just hearing these little Sunday school fairy tales. So I just felt that I owed it myself to explore, faith, believing in God, believing in Jesus. Is it real? Andy Stanley is just, I really get so much out of the way he teaches, because I feel like he has brought the foundation for my belief has been the historical facts that he presents, that this is why we know this happened and this happened. And obviously there's still a lot of faith that is involved, but it sure is nice to know that a lot of these details are real and accepted. And the more I study and read and learn, the more better I feel about it. And it is, again, so it's just been a draw. It's been an attraction. Some of the things I was afraid of to talk about, like, we talked about flipping that switch. The hypocrisy is a big thing. The people that I've seen that, we all know the people that are extremely judgmental. I know for the South Side, my shirt, you don't see it. Their thing was be known for what you're for. And that, when Southside came up with that pulled me one step closer, because I'm like, that's the Jesus that I want to follow. I want to follow somebody that is, what is he for? And he's for loving. It's not about constantly telling everybody what you're against and this is wrong and that's wrong. And, and this whole journey for me and me doing this is not to convince you of anything. All I want to do is make it okay for you to question it and research it yourself. Explore it yourself, and not to worry about what answers. Don't be afraid of the answer. I don't want to believe in God out of fear. One thing I wrote down is just being honest. How many of us believe, or we're scared to believe because we don't want to be gullible? We don't want to think that the government controlled us. And, because that's the argument that you got is, a government just created this to control people, and nobody wants to feel that way. So, those are some of the fears that had me kind of hesitated and not making that step. And, my friendships, the people I hang out with, the football games, the, wing night, and just my whole personality. I thought that it had to change to become this Christian. I thought, because I figured, once I speak of it, once I volunteer at church, once I'm in front of people, once I post about it, then people are watching your every move, and I'm sure they are. And I've never really cared what other people think, probably to a fault. But now I kind of do, because I don't want you to judge Christianity based on me, but on my behavior, the way I act. I'm on a journey, and I'm way in the beginning. I am nobody to listen to about whether this is real or what's fact or a verse, or if I tell a story, I could be dead wrong. I am so early in learning all of this that I am in no way somebody that should be talking on a stage in any way or anything like that. All I want to do is just express that it's okay to explore it little by little, to take little bites out of it, and to pick your journey at whatever speed that looks like for you. Dip your toes in the water. And so, back to, again, the hypocrisy of it all, being worried that I mentioned on another podcast of how I get in these ugly arguments, and I do say ugly things, and, ugly words just come out of me, not from an ugly place. I just think they're fun to say. Half the time I cuss because I think it's funny. And I sometimes say things just because it makes people uncomfortable, and I like watching people squirm, especially when I think they're oversensitive. Doesn't mean that's good quality, just being honest. So that's the biggest thing, is just not being ready to be the face of Christianity. And that sounds crazy to say it out loud, but that is a fear of, once I choose it, then I represent it, and I have to honor it in a way. And again, yes, that is the goal. I do want to be a good Christian, but I'm not there yet. And if you're looking at me, or if you're looking at anyone else in your church, or even a preacher, to set your standard of what Christianity is, I think you're missing it. And I think that's why so many people do have a negative outlook on Christianity, because of the way people kind of represent. But just know, we're all human. We're all sinners, if you will. We all have faults. We're trying. At least for, again, for me. Maybe some people are, hypocrites, like in the ugly way, and they're purposely being deceptive, and they know they're horrible people, but just using it as a facade. Maybe they are, but that's not my problem. So we're talking about me, and hopefully your journey. So let's go back to the pool. I was feeling this gravitational pull. I couldn't explain it. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't a whisper. God didn't say you need to do this, or, I can't explain that. People have talked about God told me, or God spoke to me. I don't know what God sounds like. I don't know if you've ever spoken with me. I can't tell the difference if it's God talking to me or my conscience talking to me. I just don't know the difference, or if there is a difference. But what I have learned, and what's changed in the last year, is I've prayed a little bit more, and maybe that consciousness is God, is trying to find a little bit of that peace. But then it was just kind of that draw. I can't explain it. It's just something that made me want to explore it more, and to learn more. And now it's almost a passion where, I'm listening and reading and watching, and just trying to just figure it out, because I want to believe it. I want to trust it. I want to feel it. So a quick story, that draw, it made me nervous as well. I was very nervous with that. As I kept getting, I was like, man, I am singing. I'm literally sitting there having these thoughts. I'm like, I'm not listening to the Beastie Boys anymore. I'm playing elevation worship music like all day. Like for months. This didn't just happen a week after I got back. It's been continuous since El Salvador, just listening to gospel music, just enjoying it. And I'm like, this is just weird. I don't understand it. Why am I enjoying it so much? Why do I like it? I wasn't forced into it. I wasn't doing it. I wasn't trying to create a habit, any of that stuff. I just genuinely enjoyed it. It made me nervous. Like, why? What's going on here? And I had that feeling, and just be honest, I'm sitting there, I'd lay in bed and be like, God, if you're trying to set me up for something, I don't know. I'm having this thought. I'm like, if you're going to take something from me and you're setting me up to be prepared, I don't know if I'm going to buy in. Like, I don't know that if I was to lose a child or something like that, that I would be the faithful person that you see so many people are. And I was scared. I was like, man, they tell you that the devil don't care about you when you're living with him. But the moment you start getting closer to God, that's when the devil starts getting involved. So that made me nervous. I'm like, well, hey, what, I just don't think I can handle that. And, everything's great. It just kept growing and growing. And the reason I said that is because then I think about 4 weeks ago, we found out that my mom has cancer. That was shocking. I'm sure that's shocking to most people, but it doesn't run in our family. My mom's extremely healthy, working. It was really shocking. And I was laying there thinking, actually, I said a prayer, and I was just like, thank you, God, for drawing me in for this, whatever this is, whatever you have pulled me into, because I have some sort of peace. I have an outlet. I had the ability to pray and ask and to believe God for whatever, his will is. I'm still struggling with the prayer thing, asking for things specifically, but I do ask. I tell God, hey, this is what I want. I want my mom healed and to live forever, but I do understand that it's whatever is in his plan. And it hit me like that moment that was my growth right there. That, wow, it was really incredible that I had that kind of peace and that kind of just thanking God for bringing me closer to him so that I could handle the situation. So I thought that was a pretty big deal. I was really, really happy with that. And so here we are, that's just in the last month. And, just kind of going through this and just believing that he's involved and he's here with me, really. Having somebody to talk to about it, somebody just to have some comfort and to believe that there's a heaven and all of that good stuff. So those thoughts are still new and wild, and so I really can't break those down for you right now. But it was that showed me a lot of growth in the last 12 months, that I went from not praying at all to actually saying a prayer and being thankful that I had this opportunity, that whatever led me to wanting to do a mission trip and wanting to do another mission trip, and the friends that I made and the men's group that I've joined and all of that, it's, it's 100% a God thing. It has to be, because I don't know, I've gone my whole life without it, and I've not had this much peace in tough circumstances, I guess. So whatever that looks like, it's a good thing. So I'm glad that I'm there. So back to the spaceship. There's that invisible pull, the moon's gravity. It starts to pull people in, the spaceship. It pulls them in. And I just imagine, I don't know, just kind of brought it back home for me that, as it just kind of pulls you to the surface. For years, I just had the thrusters on, and how much energy I was spending fighting that pull. Maybe it wasn't as strong before, or maybe I just wasn't listening at all. Maybe that pull was there and I was just getting exhausted from fighting that pull. And so just, you can fight gravity by firing the engines all you want. You can keep pushing in the opposite direction, but eventually you either run out of energy, you burn all your fuel up just trying to stay away, or you just let yourself get pulled in. And that's where I am now, a year later, is I'm letting myself get pulled in. And I think for the first time in my life, I've stopped fighting the pull. So a year ago, I was afraid of what I would lose by choosing God. And now I realize what I would have lost if I wouldn't have.
Are you having a David day?